In the western United States, the year 1994 unfolded with all the unpredictability of a disaster film, crossed with a fledgling tech documentary and just a pinch of red carpet mishap. It was a year when the region served as both a launch pad and a battleground for innovation, for entertainment, and for survival. The West, already known for its extremes, leaned fully into its chaotic personality. Earthquakes leveled neighborhoods, startups began changing the way people would one day live, and the entertainment industry proved once again that glitz and scandal often walk hand in hand. The year 1994 kicked off with a bang, literally and tragically. In the early hours of January 17th, the Northridge earthquake struck Southern California with terrifying force. Measuring 6.7 on the moment magnitude scale, the quake hit the Los Angeles area with almost no warning, jolting residents awake as the ground heaved beneath them. Buildings crumbled, freeways collapsed, and entire neighborhoods were thrown into chaos. The earthquake's violent shaking left a devastating trail of destruction across the region, flattening structures that had stood for decades and damaging tens of thousands more. In total, 57 people were killed and over 8,700 were injured, some critically. The disaster displaced tens of thousands of residents, left entire communities without power or water, and caused widespread fires and infrastructure failures. The Northridge quake remains one of the most costly natural disasters in American history, with damages estimated in the tens of billions of dollars. It served as a brutal wake-up call about the vulnerability of California's densely populated urban centers to seismic activity. Just days before the ground gave way in Los Angeles, the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, played host to a very different kind of event. The Superhighway Summit, held on January 11th at Royce Hall, brought together some of the country's leading thinkers, policymakers, and technologists for a high-profile conference that explored the potential of what was then being called the Information Superhighway. Vice President Al Gore presided over the event, delivering remarks that framed digital connectivity as the future of education, communication, and economic development. His advocacy marked one of the early moments where the U.S. government began to take a serious public interest in the rapidly expanding world of Internet technology. It was a signal to the nation, and especially to California, already a growing tech hub, that the digital age was not a passing trend, but the foundation of the next era. Meanwhile, in a remote corner of California, an entirely different kind of story was beginning to unfold. On January 7th, the body of Sofa Wangun was discovered stuffed inside a sleeping bag and abandoned off a deserted road. The gruesome find shocked investigators, and soon suspicion fell on her husband, Sainer Wangun, who vanished shortly after her death. What began as a grisly local crime would grow into a haunting mystery that stretched across years and continents. The discovery would spark a manhunt that would last more than a decade, involving international authorities and cold case investigators. For California, still reeling from natural disaster and standing at the brink of the digital revolution, the case added a chilling human dimension to an already eventful and unpredictable start to the year. In Oregon, the Tonya Harding-Nancy Kerrigan scandal escalated and gripped the nation with a mix of shock, fascination, and media frenzy. The story, already sensational, took a dramatic turn when Jeff Gillooly, Harding's ex-husband, pled guilty for his role in the brutal attack on Kerrigan. He admitted to racketeering charges as part of a plea bargain in exchange for testifying against Harding. The incident, where Kerrigan was struck in the leg with a police baton by a hired assailant, would go on to become one of the most infamous episodes in American sports history. It cast a long shadow over the world of figure skating, not just because of the violence, but because it revealed a darker, more cutthroat side of a sport often seen as graceful and pristine. Harding's career never recovered, and the fallout cemented the saga's place in pop culture and Olympic lore. Meanwhile, over in Northern California, a very different cultural storm was brewing. Green Day, a scrappy punk rock band out of Berkeley's East Bay scene, released their breakthrough album Dookie in February. The record exploded onto the mainstream music charts, loaded with sharp hooks, fast tempos, and a raw, rebellious energy that connected instantly with disaffected youth across the country. Powered by hits like Basket Case, Longview, and When I Come Around, Dookie went on to achieve diamond certification, selling over 10 million copies in the U.S. alone. More than just a commercial success, the album lit the fuse on the 1990s punk revival, bringing the genre out of the underground and into the living rooms of middle America. Alongside bands like The Offspring and Rancid, Green Day reshaped the music landscape, proving that punk rock still had teeth and a massive audience in the MTV era. Tonya Harding once again found herself in the national spotlight, but this time not for her skating. In March, she formally pled guilty to conspiring to hinder the prosecution in connection with the attack on her figure skating rival, Nancy Kerrigan. The plea deal marked the final act in a scandal that had captivated and shocked the country, particularly in Oregon, where Harding had trained and built her reputation. Her punishment included a $100,000 fine, 3 years of probation, and a lifetime ban from competitive figure skating, effectively ending her career in disgrace. Around the same time in Southern California, a very different kind of criminal case was unfolding. Authorities arrested Dana Sue Gray, a nurse-turned-serial killer who had been preying on elderly women in the area. The community was stunned as details emerged. Gray had murdered at least 3 women and attempted to kill a 4th, often using their stolen credit cards to go on lavish shopping sprees shortly after the attacks. The case attracted widespread media attention and exposed vulnerabilities in elder safety and trust. Meanwhile, Los Angeles was in a very different kind of spotlight as it rolled out the red carpet for Hollywood's biggest night. The 66th Academy Awards, held at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, drew millions of viewers from across the country. That year's ceremony was particularly poignant as Steven Spielberg's historical drama, Schindler's List, dominated the evening, taking home 7 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director. The film's powerful portrayal of the Holocaust struck a nerve with audiences and critics alike, solidifying its place as one of the most impactful films of the decade. The show, hosted by Whoopi Goldberg, was a blend of somber reflection and Hollywood glamour, marking a high point in what was otherwise a turbulent and emotionally charged spring on the West Coast. Federal Express Flight 705, a cargo plane bound for San Jose, California, came dangerously close to catastrophe in April 1994. A deranged flight engineer, riding along as a non-working crew member, launched a sudden and violent attempt to hijack the aircraft mid-flight. Armed with hammers and a spear gun, he attacked the crew with the intent to crash the plane in what was later revealed to be a suicide mission. Despite suffering severe injuries, the pilots fought back heroically in the cockpit, ultimately overpowering the attacker and managing to land the aircraft safely. Their quick thinking and bravery averted a major disaster and saved all lives on board. That same month, California entered a period of mourning as it bid farewell to one of its most prominent native sons. Former President Richard Nixon passed away at the age of 81 and was laid to rest at his presidential library in Yorba Linda. His state funeral drew dignitaries from around the world, including all 5 living U.S. presidents, and marked a significant moment of national reflection on his controversial legacy. Just a few weeks earlier, the music world had been shaken to its core by the loss of Kurt Cobain, the troubled yet brilliant frontman of Nirvana. Though Cobain died at his home in Washington state, the reverberations of his death were felt deeply across the West Coast and beyond. As the face of the grunge movement that had exploded out of Seattle in the early 1990s, Cobain had become a reluctant icon to a generation disillusioned by consumerism and conformity. His suicide marked a tragic end to a short, turbulent life and symbolized the fading innocence of a decade that had only just begun to define itself. In 1994, California solidified its role as a major hub of scientific innovation when the Food and Drug Administration gave its stamp of approval to the Flavor Saver tomato. This was no ordinary produce. It marked a turning point in biotechnology, becoming the first genetically modified food ever approved for human consumption in the United States. Developed by a California-based company, the Flavor Saver promised longer shelf life and better taste, stirring both excitement and controversy as the public began to grapple with the idea of genetically altered groceries. This moment signaled the start of a new era in agriculture and food science, with California once again at the forefront of technological advancement. At the same time, the cultural landscape in the Golden State was shifting as well. In the realm of music, alternative rock was on the rise, and a major contributor to that wave was the release of Weezer's self-titled debut album, commonly known as the Blue Album. Recorded in Los Angeles and produced by former Cars frontman Rick Ocasek, the album blended crunchy guitar riffs, quirky lyrics, and pop sensibilities into something fresh and immediately memorable. Tracks like Buddy Holly and Say It Ain't So quickly earned airplay and cult status, launching Weezer into the national spotlight. What started as a modest release soon became a defining record of the decade, with California once again acting as a launchpad for creative disruption. On June 12, 1994, Los Angeles was shaken once again, not by the kind of natural disaster Californians are used to bracing for, but by a gruesome and deeply personal act of violence. The bodies of Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ronald Goldman were found outside her Brentwood home, brutally stabbed to death. The crime scene was shocking, and the news spread like wildfire across the country, igniting a media frenzy almost immediately. Suspicion quickly turned toward Nicole's ex-husband, former NFL star O.J. Simpson, whose public image began to unravel under the weight of mounting evidence and growing scrutiny. 5 days later, in a moment that felt pulled straight from a surreal television drama, millions of Americans sat glued to their screens as Simpson, a fugitive now wanted for double murder, fled police in a white Ford Bronco driven by his friend Al Cowlings. The chase crawled down the 405 freeway in Southern California, with helicopters overhead and police cars trailing behind at low speed. Freeways were lined with stunned onlookers. Regular programming was interrupted. It was the kind of event that stopped the nation cold, bizarre, tense, unforgettable. Meanwhile, another historic event was unfolding just miles away. The 1994 FIFA World Cup had kicked off in the United States, marking the first time the tournament had been held on American soil. California played a major role as host to several key matches. The U.S. men's national team pulled off a stunning 2-1 victory against Colombia at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena on June 22nd, a win that broke a 44-year drought of World Cup victories for the American side. That game, charged with national pride and electric atmosphere, briefly shifted the mood of the country, at least for soccer fans. But the celebration was short-lived. On July 4th, in front of a spirited crowd at Stanford Stadium in Palo Alto, the U.S. faced off against Brazil in the knockout round. Despite a valiant effort, the Americans were defeated 1-0, ending their World Cup run. Still, the event helped solidify soccer's place in the American sports landscape and left a lasting impact on fans in California and beyond. Up north in Washington state, the end of June brought devastating news for the military community. On June 20th, a gunman opened fire at Fairchild Air Force Base, killing 4 people and injuring over 20 others in a mass shooting that stunned the region. The incident shook the base to its foundations, exposing vulnerabilities in what should have been a secure environment. Just 4 days later, on June 24th, tragedy struck again. During a routine training maneuver, a B-52 bomber crashed at the same base, killing all 4 crew members on board. Investigations later revealed that pilot error stemming from risky and aggressive flying behavior played a central role in the accident. These back-to-back tragedies brought a somber cloud over Fairchild and left the community reeling, searching for answers and healing amid the shock. In the rugged wilderness of Colorado, tragedy struck on Storm King Mountain when a fast-moving wildfire overwhelmed a crew of wildland firefighters, claiming the lives of 14 brave individuals. The blaze, fueled by dry brush, steep terrain, and unpredictable winds, spread with terrifying speed, leaving little time for escape. The fallen firefighters, many of them young, had been working to contain the blaze near Glenwood Springs when conditions suddenly worsened. Their sacrifice became a chilling symbol of the risks faced by those who battle the relentless fires that regularly threaten the American West. The incident would prompt major changes in firefighting protocol and safety standards, and it remains etched in memory as one of the deadliest days in wildland firefighting history. Farther north, in Seattle, Washington, a different kind of disaster was narrowly averted when 4 massive ceiling tiles, each weighing 26 pounds, suddenly plummeted from the roof of the King Dome just hours before a scheduled Seattle Mariners baseball game. The falling tiles left gaping holes in the concrete structure and would have caused serious injuries, or worse, had the stadium been filled with spectators. The incident forced the immediate cancellation of the game and sparked a broader conversation about the aging stadium's structural integrity, eventually contributing to discussions that led to its demolition years later. Meanwhile, down in Southern California, the global spotlight was shining brightly on Pasadena as the historic Rose Bowl Stadium played host to the final match of the 1994 FIFA World Cup. On July 17th, in front of more than 94,000 spectators and millions watching around the world, Brazil and Italy battled through a tense and tightly contested match. With both teams locked in a scoreless draw after regulation and extra time, the championship was decided by a dramatic penalty shootout. In a moment of high drama, Brazil emerged victorious after Italian star Roberto Baggio missed the decisive kick, sending the ball sailing over the crossbar. The Brazilian squad secured its 4th World Cup title, making history and igniting celebrations that echoed far beyond Pasadena, from Rio to Sao Paulo and all across the soccer-loving world. The event marked a turning point for soccer in the United States, boosting its popularity and paving the way for the growth of the sport nationwide. In the summer of 1994, a tragic and chaotic scene unfolded in Honolulu that would forever alter public perception of animal performance in circuses. During a circus show at the Neil S. Blaisdell Center, an African elephant named Tyke broke free from her handlers in a violent outburst. In a terrifying sequence of events, Tyke attacked and fatally injured her trainer in front of hundreds of horrified spectators. Panicked circus staff and audience members fled as the elephant stormed out of the arena and onto the city streets, causing mayhem and drawing stunned onlookers. For nearly 30 minutes, Tyke roamed the streets of Honolulu, damaging vehicles and resisting attempts to subdue her. Police officers eventually cornered her and opened fire. In all, she was shot 86 times before collapsing and dying from her injuries. The incident sent shockwaves through the nation and prompted immediate and widespread outrage. It ignited fierce debates over the ethics of using wild animals for entertainment, eventually leading to calls for reform in circus practices and contributing to the slow decline of traditional animal-based circus acts in the United States. At the same time, in a much quieter but no less historic moment, Pizza Hut was making waves in California by stepping into the digital future. Without much fanfare, the fast food chain introduced a new feature, online food ordering. Though simple by today's standards, this early experiment marked a significant milestone in how Americans would come to interact with businesses in the digital age. For the first time, customers could use a computer to place a pizza order over the internet, bypassing the phone entirely. While the rollout was limited and far from mainstream at the time, it signaled the beginning of a new era, one where convenience, speed, and digital connectivity would increasingly shape everyday consumer behavior. The moment, though small in scale, was a harbinger of the tech-driven transformation that would accelerate in the years ahead. California once again found itself in the national spotlight in September 1994 as major political, legal, and cultural developments unfolded that would ripple far beyond the state's borders. President Bill Clinton signed into law the federal assault weapons ban, a piece of legislation that had been hotly debated in Washington and around the country. The ban, aimed at reducing gun violence, prohibited the manufacture of certain semi-automatic firearms and high-capacity magazines for civilian use. Though its impact would remain the subject of debate for years to come, the law marked a significant moment in America's ongoing struggle over gun control. And California, with its long history of high-profile gun violence incidents, was closely watched as a barometer for how the new regulations might play out. Just weeks later, another flashpoint emerged in the form of Proposition 187, a ballot initiative passed by voters but immediately met with fierce legal resistance. The measure, which sought to deny undocumented immigrants access to public services, such as healthcare and education, had sparked protests across California and stirred intense public debate. When a federal judge stepped in to block its implementation, the courtroom decision was hailed by immigrant rights advocates as a necessary check on what they viewed as a discriminatory and unconstitutional policy. For others, it represented a frustrating roadblock to what they saw as a necessary step to curb illegal immigration. Either way, the ruling placed California at the heart of a larger national conversation about immigration, identity, and civil rights. Amid all this political turmoil, a cultural phenomenon quietly made its debut. On September 22, 1994, the pilot episode of Friends aired on NBC. At first glance, the show about 6 20-somethings navigating life, love, and coffee in New York City might not have seemed particularly groundbreaking. But it didn't take long for the series to capture the public imagination. Within weeks, Friends had become a staple of weeknight viewing in households across California and the rest of the country, laying the groundwork for what would soon be one of the most iconic and beloved sitcoms of the decade. From college dorms in San Diego to living rooms in Sacramento, the catchy theme song and endlessly quotable dialogue started to echo through the culture, making clear that while politics might dominate the headlines, pop culture had its own powerful role to play in defining the mood of 1994. October was a pivotal month for Hollywood and the broader entertainment industry. One of the most talked about events was the premiere of Pulp Fiction, a bold and stylized crime film directed by Quentin Tarantino that turned conventional filmmaking on its head. With its non-linear storytelling, sharp dialogue, and unforgettable characters, the film became an instant cultural phenomenon. It not only revitalized John Travolta's career, but also helped solidify independent cinema as a major force in the mainstream. Critics raved, audiences lined up, and Hollywood took notice. This wasn't just another movie release. It was a seismic shift in how stories could be told on screen. In the midst of the buzz, another major development quietly laid the groundwork for future Hollywood dominance. DreamWorks SKG was officially founded by three industry heavyweights: director Steven Spielberg, former Disney executive Jeffrey Katzenberg, and music mogul David Geffen. The new studio wasn't just about making movies. It was envisioned as a multimedia powerhouse with ambitions in film, television, music, and interactive media. The trio's combined clout sent ripples through the industry, signaling a challenge to the traditional studio system and a bet on creative independence, backed by serious funding. Away from the limelight of red carpets and press junkets, a very different kind of headline emerged from California's rapidly evolving tech scene. Following a high-profile hacker incident, the phrase, "My kung fu is stronger than yours," began circulating in cyberspace. It was a tongue-in-cheek brag rooted in the online hacker subculture, and it quickly caught on as a sort of calling card for digital prowess. The phrase was popularized after computer security expert Tsutomu Shimomura began receiving prank calls in the wake of his efforts to track down notorious hacker Kevin Mitnick. What seemed like a bizarre footnote at the time would come to symbolize the growing clash between digital security experts and a new breed of cyber outlaws in the computer age. In 1994, San Francisco served as the backdrop for a pivotal moment in digital history when it hosted the very first conference dedicated entirely to exploring the commercial potential of the World Wide Web. This groundbreaking event brought together tech pioneers and visionaries, including a then up-and-coming Mark Andreessen, co-founder of Netscape, whose work on the Netscape Navigator browser was helping to reshape how the public accessed and interacted with the internet. The energy in the room was electric as entrepreneurs, developers, and investors realized that the web was no longer just a niche technology for academics and hobbyists. It was rapidly becoming a platform for business, media, and communication that would soon touch every corner of American life. Only a few weeks after this technological milestone, the political landscape of the United States shifted dramatically. The so-called Republican Revolution swept through Congress in the November midterm elections, with the GOP gaining control of both the House of Representatives and the Senate for the first time in 4 decades. It was a seismic power shift, fueled by voter dissatisfaction with the status quo and driven in part by the Contract with America, a platform of conservative reforms promoted by Republican leadership. The change signaled a new era of partisan tension and legislative gridlock in Washington. Meanwhile, back in California, another flashpoint issue was bubbling over. Proposition 187, a controversial ballot initiative aimed at denying public services to undocumented immigrants, continued to face legal challenges. Though voters had approved the measure, in November, courts swiftly intervened, issuing injunctions that blocked its implementation. The legal battle over Proposition 187 reignited fierce national debates over immigration, civil rights, and the role of state versus federal authority. In California, the court's decision didn't end the argument. It only stoked the fire, keeping the issue alive in political discourse for years to come. In Fresno, California, a tragic and shocking event unfolded when a Learjet plummeted from the sky and crashed directly into an apartment complex. The devastating impact killed both pilots on board and left several residents injured, shaking the local community to its core. The crash, narrowly missing a nearby elementary school, underscored just how suddenly catastrophe could strike and left Fresno grappling with the aftermath for weeks. Farther south in San Bernardino County, another dramatic incident took place when a runaway Santa Fe freight train lost control and slammed into a Union Pacific train at the base of Cajon Pass. The collision triggered a massive explosion and fire, sending plumes of smoke into the sky and creating significant delays and damage across the rail network. The fiery wreckage, combined with the chaos it caused, served as another reminder of how the vast infrastructure of the West could turn volatile without warning. Despite these disasters, California ended the year on a cautiously optimistic note. The unemployment rate dipped to 5.5% in December, the lowest it had been since the start of the early 1990s recession. It was a sign that the economic winds were finally beginning to shift, and that the state, and much of the western United States, was clawing its way out of years of stagnation and financial uncertainty. Businesses, particularly those in tech and entertainment, were picking up momentum. Silicon Valley was already hinting at the digital explosion to come, and industries tied to culture and media were thriving, thanks to a wave of new talent and innovation. 1994 in the West wasn't subtle. It came in loud, fast, and unfiltered. It shook the ground, quite literally, ripped open freeways, and tore through long-held assumptions about stability, both physical and social. It lit up stadiums and concert venues with a new generation of sound and spectacle, from grunge echoing out of the Pacific Northwest to punk rock anthems shaking East Bay garages. It gave birth to tech revolutions in university halls and garage startups, while quietly teaching people they could order pizza online with just a click long before smartphones were in every pocket. From high-profile criminal cases that dominated headlines to the chaos and excitement of the World Cup played on American soil, the Western U.S. in 1994 was a mosaic of extremes, brash, transformative, and unforgettable. Every twist and turn left a mark, as if the region was intent on making sure no one would forget just how alive, unruly, and influential it really was.
Come along, let's sing, where the joy will bring. Tune into the beat, feel the magic, it's true. Channel 1 9 on X, we're here just for you.